episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through a story comparing Donald Trump to Teddy Roosevelt. What are the similarities? What are the differences? And what is it going to look like after Trump is gone based on the example that may be the closest resemblance when it comes to presidential party politics. And I know that sounds really interesting to all you nerds out there. For those who aren't interested, stick with me. I promise we're going to touch on some stuff that's actually very fascinating. And of course, we're going to end today with our daily delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. Now, that's enough rambling for me. Let's jump into our daily debate. When you think of Teddy Roosevelt, who in your mind do you conjure up, besides the fact that you have photos of the man? But do you see him as the Rough Rider, the president, the Secretary of the Navy, the man who invaded Cuba, or pushed for the invading of Cuba? What comes to mind? Oh, he's Delano Roosevelt's cousin, I believe, technically, no, uncle. But point being, like, what do you think about? What do you reminisce about when thinking about him? And what are his greatest qualities in your mind? What do you remember the most is really what I'm asking. Because most people's context for him, and we're moving past the question now, are interesting. Most people probably see him as a little bit more of a populist Republican at the time. He divided the party, which some would argue led to the rise of Woodrow Wilson and the liberal Democrats at the time, which led to FDR. So some would say that he put us on a path towards a more overarching government, one that is more directly involved in people's lives, especially with some of his treading in the antitrust, the railroad space. So there's no doubt that there are certain resemblances to how Teddy Roosevelt went about interacting with the populace and displaying government as a tool to be wielded, much like the new right, which has seen Trump's pragmatic view of politics and has co-opted it and also expanded upon it and harkens back exactly to those populist eras where government is more directly involved. Now, let's be clear. Our government today is more involved than Teddy Roosevelt's government at the time. That is because of the fact that our society became more wealthy. There were higher standards for education. There were higher standards for sanitary, like the slaughterhouse cases during the early 1900s. Those are obviously cases that show more and allow for more direct integration of government into our lives and oversight and regulatory systems. So I'm not trying to pretend as though, oh my gosh, we're in a Teddy Roosevelt era. The government then, it was just as involved as the government is today. Of course, it has continually expanded, but he opened the door to allow it to happen. And when people look back and they harken back to the Teddy Roosevelt era, some have directly compared him to Donald Trump. And this story from National Review does it even more. And the headline reads, quote, "The MAG before MAGA." So make America great. The argument, or at least one of the basic ideas that the author outlines here, is that if Trump is Make America Great again, Teddy Roosevelt is Make America Great in the first place. So we'll go to their similarities that they mention right here at the beginning of the article. Quote, "They start for both men pre-White House. As Trump did, the TR, Teddy Roosevelt, staged his pre-presidential effort as much with an eye to public recognition as sustained reform or strengthening institutions. Whenever TR stumbled, he pivoted to a new venture, publicizing it like mad." Does that sound like anybody to you? Constantly coming up with something new, constantly trying to get more media attention, constantly trying to show himself as a winner. Interesting. Does it sound like anybody? Quote, "As Trump does, TR routinely alienates GOP grandees, circumventing them to get ahead. As Trump had, TR skillfully cultivated the media so skillfully that members of Congress were left trying to catch up with whatever shifts in public opinion resulting from the politicians' press allegiances." And that's a really important one, because both of them are stepping into new eras of publication. Not only in TR's time are newspapers becoming less regional, but you're starting to have a little bit more national recognition. You also have faster transfer of information in bureaus across multiple cities in order to distribute information. That is a growing, although it is a legacy system, it is a growing, innovative system that is not just limited by its previous constraints. And Donald Trump comes in not necessarily in the same way, because newspapers have been around, if not longer, since our founding, but there was a shift that was happening. And then, same thing with social media companies. They had been around for a little bit, but there was a shift happening where they were going beyond the niche and they were reaching more broad appeal, but they were also reaching the point where they had segmented in specific audiences, much like these newspapers did, because you start to have loyalty and followings beyond just your own city and locality, though of course that plays a part in it. So both of those cases are a captured audience, so to speak, or at least a semi-captured audience that now has to deal with this extra character who is trying to vie for public office and can set policy. And also they have a direct mechanism to go back and forth with them. Now, social media enables that even more, and that's why the policy shifts of Donald Trump are even more fascinating and can be even larger in scale rather than a man who has beliefs like Teddy Roosevelt. But those are both commonalities that are interesting to dissect, and also it leads to, in my opinion, a question of whether or not these men, these populists, would be the same without their feedback loop, is probably the best way to put it. Is Teddy Roosevelt more of a leader by direct belief? Is he more of a leader by his own vision than Donald Trump is? Or is Donald Trump pulling people along while also listening? That is a key differentiator, in my opinion. I believe that while Teddy Roosevelt, of course, listened to the people, he was directly involved with people in the military, interfacing with them on very normal bases. In his era, it's less easy to directly interface. And is that dangerous or less dangerous, in your opinion? I think it's actually less dangerous. Though, of course, a leader should be accountable to the people. A leader also needs to step beyond what the people think they want and guide them in a way that he believes is best. Now, he can be wrong, of course. We're not trying to say anybody's infallible. We are all lesser beings compared to the people that can see, that are omnipresent, the gods, the God that is omnipresent across our universe and have the true understanding. So we're never going to be perfect, but you have to put your faith in a leader. They have to be worthy of you putting your faith in, and that comes with a set of beliefs that are not directly influenceable by outside sources. And Donald Trump is less to this degree. Now, of course, any great man has influences around him. Teddy Roosevelt had his cadre of followers and supporters, and his executives, his direct influences in his cabinet members, just as Donald Trump does. But Donald Trump is also directly responsive to the needs of the people when it comes to popular movements. Now, this makes it even more populist, though it leads to less stability and more varying policy, which can be even more dangerous for an economy that is not necessarily on the brink, but needs gentle guiding. And going through the early 1900s after Industrial Revolution, antitrust practices by Teddy Roosevelt, they also needed a steady hand to guide them going forward. And you could argue that the variability that Teddy Roosevelt doesn't have could be at least seen as a stabilizing mechanism compared to the fact that he was trying to absolutely cripple or overregulate the railroad industry. But hey, that's a little bit deep in the weeds there, but that doesn't mean that it's not important. So what is the key thesis that the author comes back around to and it makes at the end, which is trying to make this whole process more concise? Quote, given the evidence, why does it take Trump himself to hammer the T.R. Trump resemblance? The answer is that conservatives and Republicans have spent recent years building up TR as a useful Republican model. Today, conservatives are loath to see their icon become, like so many other Republican treasures, collateral damage of the Trump era. Yet the record suggests it might be safer to stick with Reagan. Now, an image issue is basically what he's talking about. Oh, we're ruining the reputation of Teddy Roosevelt. And yet, you can love many things about a president and still acknowledge his issues. And to single-handedly compare one man and say he is more of a like to these two is not to oversimplify the matter, but it is to neglect the simple fact that times are different. No matter how much we want to compare similarities between Reagan, between Teddy Roosevelt, McKinley, any of Some people have even compared him to earlier presidents, though I think, once again, it's hard to with societal context. We are trying too hard to find those connections. It's not to say it's not valuable. It's not to say it's not important to understand all these differences and similarities between them and to have someone to compare them to in order to have a baseline. But the times are very different. These are two different populist movements. And remember here that the more important thing that I wanted to point out at the beginning is what the party did after Teddy Roosevelt was running on his own ticket after his 2 terms were up, and he came back in order to go after the nomination during McKinley's second attempt, which led to Woodrow Wilson. What happens if Trump decides to stay this involved in politics? What happens if Trump tries to play kingmaker? You're going to see a divide in the base. Obviously, there's no doubt about this. Any Republican who tells you, any conservative who tells you that they have captured the MAGA base and that they are going to work for them is obscene. I think they're lying to themselves, because you can just look at the midterm data alone, the off-year election data alone, that Trump voters don't come out and vote for other people, and sometimes they vote for Democrats or blue dog Democrats. Kentucky is a great example of this, and of course the demographics are changing. You saw more rural areas vote less Democratic, but you still didn't see the same turnout that you would see for the Republican candidate as Donald Trump. And this is the capture of the part of the base that will only ever subscribe to MAGA politics, and anything otherwise will not satisfy their needs. The Republicans have to build a new coalition. They have to do it right now, because if Teddy Roosevelt, as I've said, not everything is one-to-one, but if Teddy Roosevelt is any example of a populist movement, and once again, I think this is a bigger populist movement, and I think it is more directly even closely tied to his personality, Donald Trump, because he is so pervasive. He is everywhere. If the Republicans don't build a new movement right now, they are in hot water coming to the 2028, but more importantly, because the successor will be lined up, at least in theory. There is a logical successor. There are lots of people on the bench who can take up either mantle. And I mean that the traditional Republican, while also having MAGA influences. It's really going to come down to 32, in that, we're projecting far away. I'm saying, oh, this is going to happen. I think that the chances of consolidating happening are closer in 2028, because there will be this recent symbol of what the party can be, what the party is. And as that fades, the coalition will split, and we'll see even more ripple effects on. We'll probably see a stronger Democratic government going into the 30s and 40s. It's almost as if history repeats itself. But hey, that's enough philosophizing. That's enough big brain theory. Big brain. I'm a small brain. But that's enough out there theorizing. I'd love to know your opinion. Throw it down there in the comment section. I know you already did the daily debate. If you're a passionate user, you're at the very beginning. But if you made it this far, also throw your thoughts down there. Maybe I have it wrong. Maybe I don't have another perspective. And obviously, everybody's in their own silo, especially the way that they read information nowadays, and everything is hyper specialized. The amount of National Review articles that I'm getting simply because I go through and actually read the entire things is obscene. Because if they're so this is just another speech in general about the state of the populist bias and the ingrained ability to maintain current coalitions and thought processes rather than adapting. Algorithmic systems look at what you look at the most, and then they give you more of that content. So if it's a whole bunch of Trump memes, if it's a whole bunch of Trump creators, and you're the person who watches all the way through to those, are going to continually serve up more of those things. That creates even more of a silo. It makes it harder for the Republican Party to be able to consolidate moving forward, but also it makes it harder on us who have hardened opinions about what's going on to see beyond our bubble, because we're getting served things that semi-reminisce, or at least don't break the bubble. They may stretch it, but they may not break the bubble. So with that, let's actually go to our daily Delight. This one comes from Grumpy Cat. The headline is literally just August 9th, 2025, and it was actually posted on August 10th, and it's just a cute Grumpy Cat photo with a charm bracelet on. It's a fun photo. If you're going to work, don't look at it now, but when you get there, maybe you'll put a little bit of a smile on your face. That link to the Daily Delight, as well as the main article from National Review, will be in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at your Daily Flip, where I post links to these episodes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 6 and 6, which comes out on Tuesday and Thursday. That's our international news segment. So, with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.